Hello, everybody. Christopher Ray, what's up? Welcome to the stream today, to our Tech Talk. I'm in Twitch mindset right now. But welcome, everybody. This is the first one I'm doing on our YouTube channel, so that's a lot of fun. Today, we'll be talking about authenticating a Laravel API. And, well, let's preface this with this is being recorded. This will be on YouTube. The recording will be. And we are going to email you this as well for the recorded link. If you have any questions, please post them in chat. We're able to see the chat and hang out and answer those. To do introductions, my name is Chris on Code. I am the founder of a website called scotch.io. I'm a dev advocate at DigitalOcean. And today, I'm a really big fan of Laravel, so I get to do a lot of Laravel work today. And I know that Laracon Online is running right now, so we're going to do our best to get this in quickly so you can get back over to those fantastic talks over there. So here we are at digitalocean.com. Shout out in the comments if you've ever used us. Scotch.io has always been hosted on DO, so that's fun. This is our tech talk today, authenticating a Laravel API. And hey, Sarah. So here we are, DigitalOcean YouTube channel. This is where everything's going to be hosted. And that'll do it for our introduction type stuff. So let's talk about Laravel and all the great things that come out of the box for it. So Laravel gives you so much stuff out of the box. And one of the things it does do for us is authentication. And the thing about this talk, and there's a question in chat about it, is there are so many ways to authenticate a Laravel application that there are going to be like 4 different ways. And let me open up VS Code real quick. Where'd you go? This is how I do slides. I don't really do real slides. So if we're talking about ways to authenticate, we have the built-in Laravel authentication, right? We have the guards, which are Laravel guards, which you can bring a JWT library. And this is the way we're going to do it today. And we're going to set this up so that this will be a little bit of a quicker webinar. We usually do like an hour-long webinars. We'll take this down to like about 30, 40. And then we'll set up the next ones for the other ones, which are really popular, Laravel Socialite for social logins. We'll set up Laravel Passport, which is the OAuth implementation. We'll set up one for kind of a newer one, Laravel Sanctum. And we'll set up another one also after here for Laravel. I don't know why I typed in Laravel all the time, but authorization. So a lot of that is going to be all the different things that we'll talk about. So I'm sorry about it, but today we're going to talk about the JWT implementation, because sometimes you don't need to reach for the Passport implementation, and the Scotch.io implementation was all just JWT. And the authorization stuff we'll talk about a little bit today, but we will deep dive into it in another one, and also Socialite, Passport, Sanctum. So I hope everybody's good with that. The Passport one I'm really excited to get to, so we'll get that out to you as fast as possible, and we'll schedule that for one of our next Tech Talks. To get us started, I'm going to open up my terminal here. I have everything in a folder called Batcave, and if I ls there, I have a folder called Laravel apps. I'll cd into that. And once we're in here, I have this set up with Laravel Valet, which is what we use to kind of host all of our local applications and have them running. So I'm going to go ahead and go Laravel new JWT-Auth. We'll just leave it at that. While that runs, let's talk about some stuff in this order. Yes, I believe all of this stuff will be in this, or actually let's move Socialite out, because Socialite isn't really an API auth type thing. This is more of the API auth type stuff. And then Socialite is kind of just a front level authentication that we'll also keep. But I believe that will be our order for our auth series. So stay tuned for that. We have our app running. Let's open it up in code. What do we call it? JWT-Auth. Okay, so here we are in code. Let me change out our Or PHP color in here? No? Okay, whatever. Um, so while we're in here, let's talk about setting up our Laravel app. I don't need our terminal anymore. I'm going to do the built-in VS Code one. So to start us off, we have our .env file. I want to get this done quickly. Let's change our DB connection to an SQLite connection. While we're working locally, it's easier. Remove the status bar there. Remove the activity bar here. Get you some more room. And while we're here, we have SQLite as our database, and then we need to create an SQLite database. We'll go touch database.sqlite. So now we have a folder over here, database. Now we have this database.sqlite file. And now we can go one more setup thing. And I know this is a lot. Where are we at? There we are. We'll open this existing database, which will be under Batcave, Laravel apps, JWT-Auth, database SQLite. So this is our database that we'll be working in today. Christopher Ray with a question in chat. Can we pair Laravel authentication with this method with JWT-Auth? Yes. So the cool thing about the Laravel authentication is that they use what are called drivers, so that you didn't have to, and if we go to config auth.php, let me zoom out here. If we go here, we have our defaults. Guard is web, and the password that we're going to check on is the users. So down here, authentication guards, we have one for the web, which is what you use by default in a Laravel application. And that's like if you have any blade views that you want to authenticate on there, you use this. But if you're doing an API, which a lot of us are doing these days with headless CMSs and all that good stuff in the Jamstack, API is the guard that we'll be using. And here, driver token, we're going to bring out our own JWT package. Not our own, the JWT-Auth package. And then we'll change it here, and automatically all of the things that Laravel gives us out of the box for authentication, we'll just go ahead and use that package. And the cool thing is, if we're talking about, actually, let me open up routes, api.php. So if we're talking about authentication stuff, we have our auth helper where we can say auth user, right? We can basically use that anywhere in our application to grab our user. And the other thing that Laravel brings us is middleware, so we can say auth API there. So all of our requests to this specific route have to be authenticated using the API guard. So on the web side of things, if you wanted to use middleware there, it wouldn't be the auth API, it would just be auth. And that's because in the auth.php, the default is web. So if we change this to default being API, which we are about to, we can go over here and we can drop this :API, and that'll be our authentication. Question in chat: how secure is JWT-Auth in general? I would say it is very secure, and it's been the way that APIs have been authenticated for, I would say, the past 10 years or so, right? And it is very secure. There are just some gotchas that you need to make sure of, is that when you're storing things in your... So let's talk about the flow, and then we'll talk about the downsides to JWT-Auth. And we'll also talk about Auth0, which is a third-party implementation of authentication. So we have, normally, you have a login. So this is, hope you all like my slides. So the, let's call it server-side authway. So the server-side authway is user visits browser, right? User logs in with form from browser. And then once the request is made to our Laravel backend, the Laravel keeps user information or user session. So basically, Laravel authenticates that user based on their email and password, and then says, "Oh, you're authenticated. I'm going to keep this in memory." Keeps user auth info. And then every time a user hits back to the session, Laravel will say, okay, this is our user. We're all good there. But the API side way, and the reason we want to change it out with the API side versus the server side way is that we don't want any sort of session info stored on one server. And this is really cool because once we move to the API way of authentication and we don't store anything on a single server, we can now span our application across multiple servers and be globally distributed. This is one of the things that I had trouble with scaling Scotch.io. Once we hit around 4 million page views, it got really tough to have a single server serving all of that. So switching over to API authentication, where there was no server, we were able to kind of move a lot of our server logic into different places and put it behind a load balancer. So the API side way, user visits browser, user logs in with form, but that isn't really where the magic happens. Laravel authenticates user and gives a token. And this token, a JWT, is what is going to be used for the user to kind of come back and use that JWT user requests info from API with JWT. So that's kind of like a quick rundown of the differences. And the JWT way, the downfall is where you store it in your application on the local side. So Laravel doesn't care about the JWT about keeping that. So that's the user or the browser's responsibility, right? So the browser would usually put it in local storage, in cookie, in some kind of storage on the front end. And whenever the user comes back, we would add it to an HTTP header for called authorization. So let's do all of this right now, right here in this webinar, in this Tech Talk. Yas with the question, I wish 4 million page views per day. No, that's a monthly count. All right, so let's delete all this. Let's delete this. So the package we're going to use today is JWT-Auth.com. This is a super popular Laravel package for JSON Web Tokens. So I don't want to walk you through the install here, but let's go down and actually do the install. So we'll go. I'm getting confused. I have two of these open. Let's close this one. Hold on. Okay, so let's open up our terminal again. Let's expand this out a little bit, and then let's do composer require timon/JWT-auth. And yeah, if you have any questions, please throw them in chat. Thanks everybody for being here while this runs. So to set us up for more stuff, normally you would add this to your providers array with Laravel 5.4 or below. We don't need to do that anymore, which is cool. So we do need to publish our config file. So let's do that next once this is all done. Maybe I need a faster computer. Okay. Anybody in chat also following along with Laracon Online? So while that's running, let's go ahead and do some routes for what we want to accomplish today. Let's do a create a user route. So if we're going to authenticate users, we're going to need a user to be able to authenticate against. Let's do a login a user, log out a user. And then let's do right on. Thank you. Yeah, so if you're wondering what my theme is, I am using monokai.pro, and you can go to that in your browser. And then also my font is Cascadia Code, which is a free font. Okay, so create a user route. Let's go ahead and do that because we don't need our JWT package for that. So let's go route get user, or let's go user-create function request. I should have a snippet for this. I just reset up this computer. So let's go for app user create, and we're going to need an email, a name, and a password. So let me double check. I think we missed a step right here. Okay, so this is installed, but we did miss a step on our setup. We need to migrate. Best coder, thanks for that. Glad you're here. And NWI development, aren't we storing something local browser side anyway? So the JWT sounds similar. Yes, it is similar. The session stored on the server side way in our cookies. So yes, it is a little bit different. It's just that the server side way is something we don't have to manually manage ourselves. And this way, there's just that little bit of extra work on the back end and the front end. Okay, so let's go name Chris on code. And if you want to chat with me, my DMs are always open on Twitter. My email at digitalocean.com. I tried to get Chris, but it was already taken. And then password, we need to hash it. So let's go grab the hash helper here. Use illuminate. Who remembers these? Facade hash. Okay. So let's grab this hash one. And then we'll go down here and we'll say hash make password. Well, that's not secure. So let's do my super duper secret password. Cool. So if we hit this route, it should be able to create a brand new user for us, and we should be able to see that user in our database. Where are we? Let's go to Insomnia. And if you're wondering why I'm using Insomnia over Postman, I think it's faster. And personally, I like the UI a little bit better. Postman has a lot of stuff going on. So let's go new request, create a user. And we call this JWT auth.test is where our local server is /API/user-create. Questions in chat. I could have used the bcrypt function, huh? That's probably easier. I'm just used to using this, and you're right. It should be facades. Where am I? Facades. Sorry. Okay. So let's go back here, and yeah, bcrypt would have worked as well. I gotta take a step back. I'm bouncing everywhere. Okay, so let's go back into Insomnia. We'll send this request. I am using Valet, yes. So now this is returning 200. We didn't return anything out of this route, so nothing came back. But our user should have been created. So let's go down here, SQL Pro. Let's go to the users table. Let's go to data. We have our user now. Cool. And there's our hash password. Cool. So if we go back over to our VS Code now, log in with the user, we should be able to, and I'm going to do some wishful coding here. We should be able to route get set up a new computer, but I don't have any of my snippets. Login. So we'll do function right here, request. I'll just try to type as fast as I can. Request. So we're going to say credentials is equal to, and let's just copy these two up here. So ideally, and this is our wishful coding part, we're going to say, token is equal to auth, and the string that we want here is going to be attempt. Sorry, the method we want here is attempt credentials. So this should be our JWT token. That's kind of our wish for how things go, and then we just go return token. And we'll return that back to our user. They can store it however they want. And then on subsequent requests, they'll send us the token after that. So let's go back into our terminal and make sure we can get all of this set up for JWT-Auth now that all that's done installing. Let's do the PHP Artisan vendor, and I'm just copying off their docs. Blah, blah, blah. So PHP Artisan vendor publish is what we want to do here. So that created a config jwt.php, and I always like looking through these after they're created. JWT authentication secret is there. Auth keys over here. Public key, private key. So one of the things we're going to talk about in a future tech talk will be Laravel Sanctum, which is a way that you can issue API keys per user. So a user can have multiple API keys with multiple accesses for each key. And that's actually a really, really cool package that we'll talk about. And the last part of this, let's just create a JWT secret. So that is set right there. And now we should be good to go. Oh, thank you, test coder, for that. I just copy and pasted the wrong things. So credentials should have password. Wouldn't that be bonkers if somebody let you authenticate with just name and email? So that goes right there. So notice that we're hashing it here. And the question is kind of like hash or bcrypt. They both are the same thing. I just used hash because I was used to it. But I think lately I've been leaning more towards using just the helpers like this instead of using the facade for it. And that's just me. It's easier to write. You don't have to do the import, right? Let's see. So those are our credentials. Our password we're going to send in from our browser, which we'll go grab these. Ideally, we should grab them from our API request, right? So that should be credentials is equal to request only, and it'll be email password. Is that an array that has to happen or no? I don't know anymore. So once we're there, let's go and see. That is an array. Come on, Chris. Okay, so let's do that instead of this. We'll comment that out. Other parts of setup for the JWT stuff, and let's blaze through this so we can actually use it. We need to go into our user model and import the JWT subject we need to implement. And there are two methods we need to add to this user model. We need to add, let's do it at the bottom. Public function get JWT identifier. So this is basically saying the identifier, you can make it your email, you can make it ID, whatever you want. So we're going to say return this get key. So whatever Laravel by default is going to use as the key for this model is what we're going to use. And then the last one, public function get JWT custom claims. And this is something that you can add to your JWT token so that it can be added to any information like role maybe or something like that. You can add so that it sends it back to your UI so that your UI can say, oh, hey, this is an admin. I should be able to show them like this section of the UI. Okay, so is that all we need for our setup? We have one last thing. Okay, one last thing. We go into our auth config. Guard is API, but down here, right here, under API, instead of token, we're going to say JWT. So now Laravel knows, okay, I'm going to use that package to do all of my authentication. Cool. Test coder is correct with, where's my API? With this request helper, we don't need this right here. So you could have done this as a request like that, or you could totally just do the request helper. This I added just out of habit. I always type it pretty much, but that's correct. Thanks, test coder. Okay, so let's try this out. login route, we pass in an email and a password, and we should get a token back. Cool. So let's go here. We're going to create a login request. We're going to say HTTP JWT-Auth.test/API/login. And let's go with a multi-part form here. We'll say email csavaleja@digitalocean.com. Password is, oh, I should have just said password. My super duper secret password. And one other thing is, yeah, that should be good. Let's send it. No body returned for the response. Let's see what happened here. So let's, I've always had trouble with this. Let's do a JSON real quick so that, one of the things that the Laravel API likes us to do is do content type application JSON. So let's send it some JSON. That's supposed to be email, sorry. And this is the savaleja@digitalocean.com. And this will be password. My super secret password. Send that. Now we get a token back, which is really cool. So what we can do is we can actually talk about this JWT token. So if we go back to our browser, JWT.io is a good resource. I believe Auth0 put it out. Yep. So Auth0, great at handling third-party authentication if you need that. So here's their debugger that they give us. You can paste in a JWT and kind of see output from it. So here, a JWT is 3 parts: the header, the payload, and a verify signature part. So they are separated by periods here. There's 1 part, there's 2 part, period, and the 3rd part. So if I just paste that in, right? We have the issuer here, which is JWT-Auth test API/login, and all of our information kind of in here. So Kaylee, what we're doing here is we are decoding a JWT. And let's see if this works actually. Let's go grab in our JWT.config, or it should have been in, yeah, it's in our environment file. Down here, if we throw in this JWT secret, all the way over here, oh, I see. Okay, that won't really do much for us. So what we're doing is basically sending this JWT over to our users, and then our users are responsible for storing that and using it for sending into our API. So once we have this, let's go back to our API.php. We have get login, right? We have log out a user. Let's do get a user. So get a single, or get the authenticated user. So let's do a route get me. And normally if you're doing this, these would probably be like post routes. Actually, that would be a get. This would be a post request right there. So route get me, and you would want to put some middleware on this or auth, and the get request, and my syntax is all wrong, but there we go. So let's do function like that. So this is a way that we can get the logged in user. We just say return auth user. And again, you'd probably want to route is defined as get for login. How are you getting post form data? So if we go back to our Insomnia request here, if I change this to a post request, I can hit send and I'll get this. But now if I change it back to the get request, it won't work. 405 method not allowed. Does that answer the question? But yeah, so if we go back to the post request, we get our token. Nice. I'll copy that. And let's go and create a new request. Get logged in user. So this will be HTTP JWT-Auth.test/API/me. If we send it, right, it'll error out because route login is not defined. Oh, I see. So this tried to redirect us back over to a login page. So it's essentially treating it like it's a normal browser request. For Laravel to treat this as an API request and return JSON data, we have to say content dash type application slash JSON. JSON. So once we have this, we're going to just add an authentication. So normally you could do this here as a header authorization bearer and then paste in that big old token that we just got. And now we're able to get our user out of that JSON token. And that's all there is to handling authentication with JWTs. So a lot of that is set up for the JWT package, right? But let me try to clean this up a little bit. This was creating a user. So the two mains that happened here are one, login. So you basically give a user a token here. And then two, you are going to check the token by using this middleware right here for auth. And you can also do the auth API one if you didn't have the API guard set as default. So then you get the user here. So once you have the user, then you can do whatever you need to with the user, like return user ID. You can use their ID to go get like their posts or any sort of thing like that that may be associated with the user model, which these days everything's associated with the user model, right? So that kind of wraps it up for this JWT authentication. And earlier we had talked about doing some more of these. So we're experimenting with like the length of these tech talks. Let us know what you think about like the 30 to 40 minute length that this one was, or if you would have wanted it to go to the full hour and maybe done a little bit more. We're liking these bite-sized ones right now. The next one we'll do is authorization, because once we have a user authenticated, and let's say we have a post model, we only want the owner of a post to be able to update that post. So authorization is in its own right a full talk that we'll do. And then passport is the next one after that. So between passport and I think that says JWTs, JSON Web Tokens, which one is the most preferable authentication in Laravel? As always, it depends. If you need something that's pretty quick and easy, and all you're doing is these quick authentications where you have a user and they have to do some CRUD on a certain resource, then I would recommend just using the JWT way. If you're doing a little bit more complex stuff, then definitely bring in passport. And if you're doing even more complex stuff, or you want to be simpler about your logins, you could bring in a third-party service like Auth0, right? So let's see. Also, another thing that's kind of in the middle between Passport and this JWT solution is Sanctum. So Laravel Sanctum lets you issue access tokens to users for specific things. And Passport does that as well, but it gives you a lot more control over like the scope of each access token. All right, some votes for full hours. Well, thank you for the feedback, everybody. Cool. You're welcome, Christopher Ray, Sarah Vieira. Yeah. How good is Laravel Auth for an e-commerce web app? I would say Laravel Auth is fantastic. Very secure. The cool thing about Laravel Auth is that Laravel Auth can still be Laravel Auth, but you can use a different package for it. So like, let's say here I'm using auth user, that's a Laravel thing. But here under our auth config, I'm using the JWT package, which is a third-party package. So Fabian, that's right. It's the accept is the right here, accept application JSON. And then let's drop that, send. Yeah. So if you do accept application JSON, then you get JSON back, JSON data back, JSON. I know I switched like 100 times. But if we send that, it'll treat it as a browser request. It'll send you back to a route, which we never defined a login view. So that won't work. So thank you, Fabian, for that. Yeah, any other questions before we wrap this up? Get everybody back to Laracon Online. Cool. So, Hayden, I think a lot of good resources would be closer to learning about JSON Web Tokens and authentication in general. So, JWT.io is a very good resource, and it kind of leans into all of the technical tutorials that Auth0 has. JWTs or passwords or Passport better? For that question, we will do a deeper dive into Passport, and I'm pretty sure that one will take us an hour. Passport has a little bit more of granular control over what tokens can access, right? So Passport, and let me open up the docs for Passport real quick. So Passport can manage tokens, manage clients, request tokens, do tokens per client, right? So there's a lot of granular control that a token can have. So like a single token can have access to certain models and another token can have access to certain models. So you get all of that control using Passport, and it is a little bit more work. But if you just need, hey, I need to authenticate a user and make sure that they can get into my app, then the JWT way is good. It looks like there's a lot of questions on Passport. So maybe we'll do that one before the authorization one. But the authorization one is kind of necessary knowledge moving forward. So yeah, the Passport one and the authorization one will take up the full hour. That's a big subject for each of those. So yeah, thank you everybody for joining. We'll wrap it up right here. As always, you can find us DigitalOcean on Twitter. You can find our YouTube channel, just /DigitalOcean. You can find me on Twitter at Chris on Code. So I'm happy to answer any DMs there. But yeah, thank you everybody. Authorization, then Passport. Thanks, Arthur. Yeah, I think that's the correct progression from JWT, authorization, Passport, and then we talk about Sanctum, and then we bring it back to web authentication with Socialite. Cool. All right. Well, we'll wrap it up. Everybody have a great rest of your day. Thank you for hanging out with me for 40 minutes. So I'll see y'all later.